Okay, let's begin.
Welcome to Senate Chat, the Utah Senate's time to take questions and answers from the public and from the media. We welcome those who are watching us over the internet. Today's Friday, at the end of week 4, and we spent almost 3 hours on the floor today talking about medical cannabis. We had 2 bills, Senate Bill 89 and 73, and different versions of those bills. Senate Bill 89 passed. That's sponsored by Senator Vickers, who is with us, and Senator Madsen's bills, SB 73. We ran out of time, so we've circled that. We'll finish that debate on Monday. So at this point, I think we'd take any questions from the media and hope you'll send in your questions so that we can address your concerns here today.
Are you seeing votes shifting now on SB 73?
I saw at least one vote shift today, yes.
Do you think it has the support at this point with the amendments?
It's hard to tell because it was close either way going into today. The amendments, I think, help more than hurt, and we won't know until Monday.
President, where's your vote on it right now?
I'm still a no vote. Any other questions on? We'll stick to the cannabis bill. We have Senator Vickers here if you have any questions for him.
Yeah, Senator Vickers, I think Senator Madsen's most pointed statement today about your bill was that it's a placebo masquerading as a cure, and it doesn't comfort anyone but ourselves if we pass this bill. There does seem to be sort of a lack of research on the CBD issue as well as you contend on medical marijuana issue. But how do you respond to that? I mean, is it going to? You said 10 to 20,000 people. Do you think could be helped?
Yeah, based on the epidemiology of the qualifying diseases, it looks like somewhere 10 to 20,000 people. The whole challenge in this whole issue is the lack of research. There actually is more research on CBD, especially in the epilepsy arena and some of those arenas, than there is on THC. We suffer because most of the research is anecdotal and not institutionally based, like the traditional research we normally see coming out of the University of Utah or Utah State or even a federally sanctioned program. And it's kind of an interesting dichotomy. We had that discussion on the floor. You've got a class 1 substance was deemed a number of years ago to have no medicinal value. And so for a long time it just stayed that way. It was illegal on both sides, both on the regulatory side and the research side, and it's put on the shelf and forget about it, even though people were abusing it recreationally. And then all of a sudden you had a change in administration where they decided that they were going to allow states to take action on it, and they were kind of turn a blind eye. And so states started doing that, and there's a significant number of states. And we started looking at that last year. But then on the other side, they come out with memorandums, and memorandums are what they are. They're not policy; they're just memorandums. And so they say, well, we're not going to enforce, or there's no money to enforce anything. But yet on the research side, they says, oh no, you can't do that. We're not going to allow federal money to try to follow it, or not. And quite frankly, if certain institutions under certain tried to do research without a class 1 lab or something, they'd take money away. So it's kind of a weird thing, we fall into.
Do you feel like, you said incrementalism isn't a bad thing. You expressed some concerns, I think, about the consequences of what other states have seen. Can you kind of touch on those a little bit? Why are you, I don't know, fearful would be too strong a word, but why do you think your approach is better than Senator Madsen's?
Well, and we've all along, we felt cautious that we need to be cautious and moving forward. THC is still, and marijuana, everybody, I hear a lot of people say that marijuana is not a dangerous drug and you can't do anything to yourself with it. And seriously, there are deaths from marijuana. There's significant overdose. There's issues in leading to heroin deaths, and on the whole entourage effect of using marijuana. So there's concerns, in other states that have gone the medicinal route. it's hard to argue against statistics to say, teen use goes up, college use goes up, and quite frankly, the population at real risk of using marijuana is 0 to 25. Scott Burns, who used to be the drug czar under President Bush, he's back in Cedar City now. You may remember him. He was Iron County attorney and ran for Attorney General against Jan Graham, but he was the drug czar for him for quite a while. I was visiting with him, and he said, seriously, if we could get people to just completely stay away from it up until age 25, it would be a lot better off, because it does have some significant permanent mind-altering effects. So concerns about that, concerns leading to other social issues. You can look at marijuana, and if you can use it medicinally, but the perception changes when it becomes looking at it as a medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So then you get additional use by teens and others, and it leads to some difficult things. And then it also creates all sorts of grief with law enforcement, with DUI laws, and of course, depending on how you handle those laws, we've tried to craft those very carefully. So we started out by, like I said on the floor, if it's a medicine, treat it like a medicine, both from the regulatory side and the medical side. So that means that you set up a structure that allows the medicine to flow through the normal channels in a very controlled manner, and then allow the patient and the physician interaction, and then allow them to get a quality product that can be followed through on. And so we tried quite hard, and I think that we've accomplished that in setting up a regulatory system that very much mimics our current medical system in the state. And the beauty of what we've done is that we've put things in statute, and then we give rulemaking to the various agencies and the entities that need to deal with that. And that gives you flexibility, because there's things going to be changing from time to time, and if you have to always go back to statute, then that's difficult to respond when that comes. So that's probably the strength of our bill is the mechanism we set up to be in place to allow that to happen.
When you were asked about the possibility of both bills passing, you had mentioned that you were interested in, or you were willing to work with Senator Mattson to bring the best of both bills together. A couple thoughts on that I'd like to get your response on. One, under his bill, doesn't it open the door to what your bill is trying to accomplish in the first place? And two, what are the positive things from his bill that you think could complement yours?
Well, I think President Niederhauser is correct in the amendments that he's made, even the one that he didn't support, puts it in a more palatable manner. I mean, quite frankly, our premise, my premise, and Representative Dawes and those that we've been working with, we could never go to whole plant or edible. We just couldn't. I mean, it's really hard for me, being in a medical profession, to say, how do you dose that? Just how do you dose that, and how do you dose it properly and avoid any kind of untoward effects? So, his amendment there, that helps. But at the end of the day, it's kind of a sensitive issue, because you've got some people on his side that have been very, very passionate, about a whole plan and other things. We've had similar type of people who are very passionate on our side, and so at the end of the day, that works out. Then we're just going to have to sit down and try to sort through that and see if there is some common things that can come together that would allow us to have one bill go forward.
To what extent, Senator Mattson and Senator Vickers, has that recent announcement that Senator Maine referred to on the floor today from the National Governors Association, their Committee on Health and Human Services has described a situation where they're calling for the federal government to reschedule so that the adequate research can help this opioid epidemic. They're calling it one of the deadliest epidemics in the history of the nation. To what extent do you think that NGA action is going to advance the debate here while we're in session?
There's just a steady stream of this kind of thing where groups, associations are looking to change this policy, but it's been going on for a long time. I mean, back in the mid to late 80s, the DEA did their own internal review, very thorough, internally generated, went through the entire process. The administrative law judge that was to issue the final decision issued the final, without question, it should be taken off Schedule 1, but it was the political bureaucratic powers within the DEA that kept it Schedule 1. And we do know, again, it was mentioned, on the federal side, the elected officials are warming to this idea, so to embracing it. The Republican Congress has 2 budgets in a row now said no money for enforcement in states that have medical programs. And the Justice Department, as mentioned, the Cole Memoranda says if you comply with these, we're not going to come in and mess with your medical program. So that's been an ongoing effort. There are lobbyists full-time in DC trying to work on that very issue. Any additional pressure helps, but with all the pressure that's come up to now, it still hasn't made a difference. Those bureaucratic interests are extremely entrenched, and it's going to be very difficult to overcome that. There's big budgets involved, and so it's people have been working on it for a long time. It's a worthy effort, and anybody who wants to jump in, I appreciate them being there. Whether it matters here, again, there are a lot of voices, there are a lot of divided communities on this, and I don't know if it impacts it more than any other endorsement by any other group.
Senator Vickers, your thought?
Yeah, and I said for a long time, I don't care what side of the equation you're on, you should support changing classification somehow, just because they allow for the research. Now, what's the right way to do? That's another question. I've talked to people that feel it's just simple to move it to a class 2, and then there's some real positive things about that. It opens up the research model. It doesn't allow you to just all of a sudden start prescribing it, because you still have to have an FDA-approved product. Some of the questions come through on this side of the illegality and misuse of it. Does that open doors on that side? Talk to researchers that feel like the better solution is to just keep it as class 1, but change what you have to go through. It's pretty onerous to get a class 1 lab. We've got a couple up at the U, but it's very onerous to do those. And so change the mechanism and how to get a class 1 lab to do research on it. So there's kind of a differing of opinion, but back to your question, what the Governors Association is going to do affects us here. I'm kind of like Senator Mattson. I don't think a lot. I mean, we're doing our own state efforts, and she has always got a resolution to do that. I think it's a real positive thing. So, at the end of the day, that has to happen, really. And maybe if enough states are doing what we're doing, and it'll push that over the edge.
Senator Mattson, did Senator Weiler, Senator Knudsen, they were both no votes last year on your bill, both yes votes today, it sounds like. Were you surprised by either one of those? Were they in your count already, and what do you think it means as we go into Monday?
I was surprised by Weiler. We had never had him in our even undecided column. We'd always had him as a hard no. So he confirmed afterwards that he was an ion too. So that was a surprise. I've been interacting with Pete, so I wasn't surprised by that at all. I understand what happened last year, and I think we've more than overcome that. So that was not a surprise. And there were others that on the floor and afterwards approached me that we thought that we had that were in our no column. So I was pleased by what happened this morning.
So
on that line, you mentioned before that you've never gone into a vote so uncertain. So has that changed now? Are you feeling more confident about it going into Monday?
Well, yes, but I don't know why. I mean, I guess there was in one case, yes, I know I have one more concrete vote than I did before, but there's just some other things coming back. Generally, I feel that I'm more secure than I was before. Yes, it's going to be tight either way, I think.
It is going to be tight.
Senator Mattson, I just have a clarifying question. So your bill would allow marijuana to be consumed in edible forms or in e-cigarette vapor, but not traditional vapor. Is that correct?
It would not allow smoking. It would not allow combustion.
Right.
In the bill, it says you have to get up to around 500 degrees to burn it.
Mm-hmm.
And none of my bills have ever contemplated that because it's unhealthy and it's wasteful.
Right.
So then what we're left with now is people can't vaporize because we've amended the whole plant out. So they can't buy the whole plant, go home and vaporize that using a volcano or a pen. They can't go home and cook it into their brownies. They can't go home and extract the medicine themselves with cheesecloth and cold water.
Mm-hmm.
So everything now has to be commercially extracted and put into a medical extract configuration. We have not limited those configurations because some of these for some people a patch works really well, but for cancer patients where they have no adipose tissue, the patch doesn't work anymore. You have to have a tincture where you can get it under their tongue because some of them they can't swallow. Mm-hmm. For some of the patients, it's good to have an edible form or a lozenge or something. For some people, as we discussed on the floor, the respiratory delivering it through the respiratory system is very important for some patients, some of the conditions that we have. And smoking's off the table, but vaporization, the technology is there, and that's warming it to about 300 degrees, and you get a vapor, again, that's more like the vapor that comes out of your kid's vaporizer when they have a cold, or maybe and so we allow for that use. You extract the oil out of it, and then you warm it to 300 degrees. And there are little pens that are configured to where you put the extract into the warming pen, and it tells you exactly how much is being delivered. So the dosing, again, this clears up all of the dosing issues. But we have not limited, edibles, lozenges, whatever is fine. We've limited how they can be configured, and the coloring. They can't look attractive to kids. They can't have. So we've limited that. But as far as whether it's a patch or an edible or a cream or what, we've not limited that whatsoever. We just said no smoking.
Got it. Everything else is still on the table.
Everything else, whatever the industry, the docs, and the patients decide is best, is what we've left it up to them.
When you talked about Amendment 7, you said you didn't want to, I think, disappoint the patients that you've been working with and have come to know. Or no, you said you don't want to let them down. Do you feel like you are letting them down with the amendments that changed the bill today?
Well, I know that many of them are disappointed. I mean, I have seen the financial strain that a family undergoes when they have a serious illness in their family or somebody in their last days, and that care. And I have always been, again, my bill was not written of by and for government. My bill was written for the patients. We always put them first, the constituents, the people that sent me here, and I try to keep the costs down. And that having the ability to take that raw flour without the cost of processing is a way to keep the price down. So I don't want to let those people down. It will necessarily, I studied economics under Walter Williams, and I know that when you raise the price, you necessarily, unless there's a substitute, you price people out of the market. And some people probably won't be able to afford it. Or they'll go to the street because it'll be much less expensive when it hasn't gone through the processing and the testing. And that's unfortunate. And I don't like that to happen, but whatever, unintended consequence, whatever the concerns are, they're substantial enough to have inhibited the progress of the bill. And I think that, again, because with technology and innovation, and we give the industry enough freedom, to make a profit and to innovate, they'll be able to overcome that. They'll find efficiencies. We've kept the fiscal note down. So while I don't like that, hopefully we've done enough other things to mitigate the impact. Does that make sense?
Any questions from our viewers?
We do have one question. This comes from Twitter. Somebody wants to know, what are you doing to get more involved with the citizens in Utah, and how can we get more involved with the Utah Senate?
Great question. The best place to get involved is when we're in session. Come up and visit your legislator, go to a committee, spend some time on the floor, but for sure, communicate with your legislator. Know who they are. Probably 90% of the people in the state couldn't mention both their House member or their Senate member. And we want to get to know our constituents, and so we encourage you to reach out to us. I'm actually having a town hall meeting tomorrow at the Sandy Library. I try to reach out as much as I can during the session to try and take input from constituents, and I think most of my colleagues do the same. Great question. Thank you. Any other comments on that?
I'll just say that, since I come up, I do a weekly update. So I do a written update that sends out, and we send that out to 7,000 email addresses. We send it out to all the news resources in southern Utah, where I reside. And I also do a radio update. I get on the radio every Friday morning and spend about 10 minutes on the local radio station. It goes out throughout southern Utah and do that as well. So, and you get a lot of positive feedback. And you do surveys and other things. And we get a lot of positive feedback on that, and they appreciate it. People appreciate it when we reach out.
I was just going to say, when I go on the radio, I don't get positive feedback, so I don't know what I'm saying.
You got your own TV show. What are you complaining about?
Yeah.
Something I thought was interesting by Senator Weiler, he brought up the politics of this, which I thought was interesting. I don't know how it would go, but there is the issue about if there's frustration perhaps in the population if this doesn't pass. What would happen? Could a group actually come up with enough names and jump through enough hoops to get it on the ballot in November? My suspicion is that would cause a terrific amount of young people to to turn out that probably aren't participating. I'm not sure the mechanics are sympathetic to actually getting something on the ballot, but it's something worth considering, should it not pass.
Any other questions?
Just quickly for Senator Hilliard, you have the responsibility of balancing the state's checkbook, Senator, you and some others, and we're getting closer to the time when appropriations are going to have to be described and met. The governor indicated that he thought he was going to see a lot of his initiatives get through that process, but with 40% of the budget earmarked already, how's this working for you at this point in time? And some bills are coming through that don't mention earmarks, but their funds are being dedicated in the process.
It's a process of going through all the requests. I don't know if you saw, but the committee's approved about $220 million more in ongoing funds than we have, and about $110 million more than we have in one-time money. So now it's a process of trying to figure out which ones we have to fund, which one we can fund or should fund to do that. I always say, people say, why do you wait till the last day to pass the budget? And the answer is simple, can't wait any longer. And so what you'd really try to do is bring these together. We tried it last year and it worked out really well, and we're doing it again this year. The Senate leadership, Republican leadership, will meet and we'll go with this and give our budget. The House will do the same thing with their Republican leadership. Then we'll get together and then see where we've agreed, where we disagree, and how we can bring the thing together and do it. As you probably know, we have to be done the Friday before the session ends, because our staff takes all day Saturday and all day Sunday printing up the budgets so they'd be on our desks Monday morning. That gives everybody a chance to read it, see if we made any mistakes in it, dialogue, and then we have it approved. But we do this with our caucus. I meet with the Republican caucus, the senators, and the Democratic senators personally. Or it's easier with the Democrats because there's so few of them. But I meet with them and go through the budget so they understand what we're recommending and see if they have any real problems and recommendations. And as you've noticed, the Senate budget usually is approved unanimously by both Democrats and Republicans here. So
We've noticed too.
yeah. But it's a very difficult process, because I'll tell you, I get through the thing at the end of the day and I say, holy cow, there's some really good programs that we just don't have the money to fund, but I'm glad we have to do it.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a couple more questions from people watching us over the internet. We'll take those questions and then hope everyone has a great weekend.
Awesome. Really quickly, how did the no voting senators come to terms with the idea that if the medical marijuana issues were left to the ballot, they meant get none of their concerns addressed? And then somebody wants to know who your 3 favorite bands are. And then we're done.
The first question is we don't know because no vote was taken, and so we don't know who. I guess Senator Mattson might know who are yeses and who are no and who are on the fence, and then you can never know exactly because votes switch when the vote's actually taken. And at this point, it's I can't tell whether this is going to pass or not. And I've always seen it as a very close vote. And we'll see on Monday what happens. And as far as the 3 bands, we'll start with Senator Hilliard.
What's a band? I'd get my kids here to tell you that. I'm always an Alabama fan, so play Alabama.
For me, it's Creedence Clearwater, Three Dog Night, and Moody Blues.
You just got most of mine, but if I have some free time when I just want to relax, it's just Beach Boys. Go back to the Beach Boys. That's good music.
Probably Rolling Stones, Eagles, and Mozart.
Good. I'm a big Eagles fan. I also like Boston and ELO. So thank you. Have a great weekend, everyone. Join us Monday for another version of Senate Chat.